So, right now, if you are feeling in chaos, you've got too much to do, you're almost at burnout, I want you to know that your team feels it. It doesn't matter how much you think that you're hiding it from them, your team picks up on that energy and it's affecting your whole workplace. So, we're going to talk about work-life balance because, in many ways, it is a scam. Okay. If you're in a high pressure role, if you're a leader or a manager that feels like you have to always be on, it's very difficult to talk about work-life balance because it almost feels like you're not doing enough if you're prioritizing your life. Okay, so I'm here today to talk about a few tips of, first of all, how to recognize if that's you, and second of all, what you can do about it in a way that still maximizes your productivity, so that you're not doing it at the detriment of what it is that you're trying to achieve. So the first thing is when is work-life balance or when is overwork a problem? Well, first of all, are your relationships suffering? Do you feel like you're in chaos? Do you feel constantly stressed? Do you feel like you have to do more? And are you almost wearing that sense of busyness as a badge of honor? There are many leaders that I've come across that do equate being super busy and always stretched as they've linked that to being of high value. So ask yourself, is that you? Have you somewhere along the lines made the mental connection towards always being busy with being of high value? Because those two do not need to be intertwined, but yet sometimes they do over the course of time. Um, so if you've said yes to any of those things, okay, then there is a good chance that it's affecting your performance. And even if it's not affecting your performance, perhaps it's affecting the performance of your team. Perhaps they're looking at your example and thinking, in order for me to aspire to a leadership role, I need to push myself to the point of burnout, which of course is not sustainable performance. It's not what we want for ourselves, and it's definitely not what we want for our team. And I can assure you that even if your team does want it, they probably have a family behind the scenes that is, that is going to create a struggle for them anyway. So rather than looking at how we can stretch ourselves and be on the border of total collapse, let's start to explore how can we become sustainable in our performance, so that we see our career and we see each workday as it's a marathon. It's not a sprint. It's not a constant sprint to the finish line. Because if you are in that space where you're constantly pushing yourself to the edge, it it might take a little while to manifest, but you are heading towards burnout. There's plenty of stories of people. You've only got to go to certain hospital wards where people have had a string of heart attacks or cancer or any of those things. The first thing, if you were to ask them, particularly people that are in high pressure jobs, what was going on, and consistently they'll just say, well, I was so stretched and so stressed. And so then when another life stress came along, I was already at my limit. I just couldn't cope anymore. And so the body gives them feedback. So don't let health be your crisis. Hopefully you're not already there. Let's look at ways that we can do what we're currently doing, but do it better, do it more efficiently. So the first thing is cut out anything that's not a high priority. Okay, anything that is not a high priority, just cut it out. Are all those meetings necessary? And get very intentional with setting your day, okay, and working on the highest priority actions that are going to give you the maximum result. And so setting those boundaries, you wouldn't let somebody barge into a meeting. You wouldn't let a client or a customer just barge into a meeting and start talking about what they had for lunch yesterday. So set boundaries with your time as well. Don't let an email that comes through at 11 o'clock at night when when you're on the weekend when you're spending time with your family or friends. Don't let an email hijack you. Set boundaries and get very intentional. And this also allows other people to know what your expectations are. They'll know that, hey, you don't respond to emails, or you don't even look at your emails on a Sunday. I think most people would say, well, that's fair enough. That's fair enough. And that only things that are absolutely urgent would require a phone call, so that then you're not constantly bombarded and your attention isn't constantly being pulled from side to side. So if you are somebody that does, the problem is these days we do have our emails sitting on our phone. And so how often, have you ever been guilty of actually just sitting there, maybe you're on a night out with friends or family or on your downtime, and you just thought, I'll just quickly check my emails. I know I have. I've definitely been guilty of that. But being intentional about setting your times, it not only allows you to have downtime, but it also sets the expectations for your team and your clients about when you are accessible and creates that set of boundaries. If you receive an email that is not high priority on a Sunday, I think that most people would say that it's a reasonable expectation that others wouldn't receive an answer until a Monday mid-morning would be totally appropriate. So the thing is here also, make sure that you are leading by example. Okay. Do you want your managers and the people below you to look at your example, follow suit, and then burn out? Okay. If you want longevity for your business, if you want longevity for your team, it's important that you set a pace that is sustainable. And the actuality is that we perform better when we're at the border, when the border of support and challenge. Okay, we're at the border of order and chaos. We don't want to be constantly pushed so that we're constantly tipped over the edge and that we are at maximum stress constantly. It simply doesn't work. Okay. Science has proven this. There's a sweet spot. There's a sweet spot in the middle. And so that's what we're aiming for. We don't want our work-life balance to be totally 50-50 in that that we're not fired up and that we're not productive, that we're just a little bit too casual and relaxed. Although I have seen that work for some, but for most people, having the right amount of good stress is what actually works for them. We're just making sure that the scales don't get tipped too far. Now the last one, this one here the last tip here is a little bit trickier. Find ways to mentally clock off. Okay, when you walk through the door and you're there to spend time with your family, be with your family. Okay. If you're showing up to a social event with your partner, be there, be in the room. Don't mentally be somewhere else and be distracted. Now, this one may take a little bit more practice depending on where you are currently sitting in the spectrum of being able to clock off and being not able to. For some people, just mentally saying that to themselves, just letting themselves know that I've clocked off from work. I'm going to spend the next portion of the evening with my family, and I might set my alarm half an hour earlier and wake up and address anything that needs to be addressed if I feel that there may be something urgent on the horizon. Unless you are a doctor that's about to perform some sort of life-saving surgery, the reality is nobody's probably going to die or be injured because you haven't responded to an email or a phone call late at night. So find a way, just put things into perspective for yourself. Okay, give yourself a reality check and find that way to mentally clock off. Do you need to journal? Do you need to do a meditation? Is just quite simply setting the intention and telling yourself, I'm going to park that over here. I'm going to pick it up tomorrow morning and I'm going to choose to be in the room with the people and be present with the people that I'm here with. Maybe even just choosing to, maybe you're not a journaler, maybe you're not a meditator. Have you got someone that you can just debrief with for 5 minutes and then mentally just pop that over there? That's probably the most important tip because you can do everything else. You can do everything else well, but if you're on your downtime, if you're just mentally not in the room, then it's not really downtime. So I hope that those tips have helped you. So remember, if you're constantly overstressed, if you're in chaos, if your relationships are suffering, this might be something to look at. If you feel like you're always on, okay, then this is definitely something to look at. And if you are someone that over the course of time has equated being busy with being of value, then definitely this is time to look at work-life balance, what that means to you, and how you can get this into some sort of order so that you don't become another statistic and that you don't burn out. Thank you for watching this video. If you have any comments or any feedback, how has this affected you in your life, then please drop them in the comments. We'd love to hear from you. And if you've got anything out of this video, then please like and subscribe to the channel. Thanks.